Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for voting, first of all, for dedicating time to actually come to this event. And thank you so much for taking the time to actually come to my topic. And with this topic today, I want all of you to start exploring a slightly different mindset to how you build your products. And this is something that I'm really passionate about because I have been fortunate enough to work for platform companies pretty much my whole career, but I only recently started realizing how the platform thinking and the platform mindset is actually different from the traditional product management and product approach. And I want to share with you a couple of different thoughts on how you can apply and how you can think about your products. Maybe it's going to be relevant to what you're doing, maybe not, but regardless, it's going to equip you to start thinking about products slightly differently from now on. So today we're going to talk about why every product manager needs to think like a platform strategist. But really important is to understand what is actually a platform, because the word platform is used so many times in so many different contexts, so it pretty much doesn't mean anything at this moment. Well, so first of all, let's start with who I am. I'm Elena Leonova. I'm a chief product officer at a company called Spryker. We're a digital commerce platform. And throughout those years, I had experience working for, as already mentioned, for other platforms. I started with Magento, which has been one of the leading digital commerce platforms on the market for quite a long time. Now actually is owned by Adobe. BigCommerce, which is one of the companies known here in Austin, Texas, quite a lot. So I had a huge honor to be part of that team, and now actually doing similar things, leading the product organization for a company called Spryker. I also mentor a lot of aspiring and existing product leaders on the side, in addition to my full-time job, as well as also advising some of the startups to build successful products and how to think of products as a business, not just as a product and a feature function. So to start this conversation about the platforms, as I was researching a lot of different materials for this conversation, a lot of people actually refer to this quote from Tom Goodwin, and he's one of the really famous marketers out there. Maybe somebody who is here from the marketing space actually know him. And he, back in 2005, quoted, or at least he says that he was the first one who said this. So he had this really interesting quote that back then he observed something really interesting happening on the market. And at that time he said that Uber has been one of the biggest taxi companies, but actually didn't own any of the vehicles. Facebook, and now we can think about Instagram or TikTok or any of the other platforms, pretty much has a similar experience. They are really popular, but at the same time, they do not produce any content themselves. Airbnb, a similar type of story. They have outcompeted pretty much any of the hotel networks, but at the same time, they don't own any of the real estate. So how all of that is applicable to platforms? When we think about our products, we actually need to do, most of the time, all the things, right? So we are the ones who need to come up with an idea. We have to develop all the features and functions. And we are, as a company, are the ones who are producing every single thing that needs to be available there on the product side. But it would be nice to actually tap into something like this where you can actually grow as a business, but not necessarily have to own that many things. And what is really interesting is that when you think about the platforms, because all of those companies are platforms, when you look at the economy out there, 70% of all the unicorns are the platform businesses. And it's not just Uber and Airbnb, but it's Google, it's Apple. All of those companies, like 70% of all the unicorn businesses out there at the moment are platform companies. And only some companies actually operate as a product company. But I'll explain you later what is the true difference between them. Then when we also think about the largest companies in the world, in terms of the revenue and the market share, they're also 8 out of 10 companies are platforms. And it also tells us something that in order for you to actually grow that much, you have a higher chances of being a platform than being a standalone product. And also 40% of the whole global economy is actually going to be actively driven by the platform companies. We already see that at the moment of 2025, the projection has been to be 30%. And we're actually really close to that at the moment. So, but what are the platforms? Because I already gave you kind of just some examples, and you might think like, oh, well, that's not actually applicable to me. So I found like there's lots of different market landscapes of platform companies, and I just wanted to give you an example of some of them. So when you think of platforms, all of those companies and all of those small logos there, hopefully you're familiar with many of them, but all of those companies are platforms. But there's a really big difference between the companies that actually just exchange values. Like, for example, when we think about Airbnb, I know you actually come to the platform, there is a host, and then there is a traveler, and you actually exchanging the value on the platform. And it's kind of like, you can think of them more as a marketplace. But then there's a completely different type of platforms, which is more of the maker platform, where somebody is not exchanging the value, but is actually creating the value on the platform. Just during this conversation or this conference today, I met Katie, and she works for, like when she introduced herself to me, she said that she is working for the company that creates Salesforce apps. So this is an example of those companies that actually create certain capabilities on a platform, while Salesforce doesn't need to do all of that themselves. So now the question is it possible to actually replicate something like this, or do you have to be a big company in order to do that? Or is it possible to actually create this ability for others to contribute on your platform, so then you don't have to go and build every single feature? So then you don't have to be the one who is actually owning all of the hotels or owning all of the cars or actually creating every single feature. And the answer is yes. It's absolutely possible for any company at a certain moment of time to start thinking as a platform business model, but you just need to understand how to do it. So before we dive into all of the details of it, how many of you actually work for platform companies at the moment? So what are your companies, if you can share?
Okay, the platform in a different.
Yeah. So how do you?
You're talking about a platform here where you don't really own this stuff. I'm talking about a platform in which we create a platform and we have the different elements that plug into a platform. So I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So it's cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So there are the different elements. Do you want to support something at the application level? Are you doing it through REST? Are you doing it REST services? Are you doing it through a REST microservice? Are you protecting a file? Are you protecting data in transit? So there's, it's all a matter of where the customer is looking to protect the data.
Mm-hmm. But like other companies are able to actually expose all of that and like build certain capabilities?
They integrate.
Integrate. Okay, that sounds great. Peter, tell us more about you.
Yeah, so I work for BigCommerce, which is a company here in Austin, creating e-commerce software. And it allows other companies to create pieces of functionality, plugins, to enhance the functionality of the platform. So like, shipping solutions, payment solutions, and things like that. It would be possible to cover the whole space just ourselves. Like, it's just 1,000 people, and there are like, hundreds of different payment providers all over the world. So you actually it helps to get others.
Anybody else want to share their story of like how your products are actually operating as a platform? I think there were a couple of more people.
The reason I kind of did that sign is because I'm working for higher ed. I'm at Texas A&M University in the IT department. We recently, past couple of years, had a restructuring of all IT into different verticals. I'm in the architecture department. We're in cloud engineering and specific pitching those and sort of reselling them to different, very much product management-ish, but for higher ed, profit gains and whatnot.
Yeah, but that's so what is actually really interesting about those examples is that a lot of people typically think that if they have like an internal platform where people like you have different assets, like the rules of the platform is not applicable to you because I know it's more of an enablement platform. But it's absolutely like the rules of the platform actually absolutely applicable to you because you are trying to enable others to do something that would not have been possible to do otherwise, or would be much harder, and therefore it's the same kind of approach is actually applicable to those type of platforms as well. So let's take a look at different business models because that's actually where the things get really interesting. So there's probably other like different types of business models, but if you were to separate business models into like two large blocks, obviously the world is not simple, but we will pretend like it is. So there are the linear business models, and then there's platform business models or non-linear business models. And the difference is that when you actually build a product, so let's say you use any of the apps on Apple Store. So you actually create this product, and then you try to actually go and sell this product to many customers. So you have to make sure that this product is great by design. You are the one who's going to be adding more and more things to it. So if you want to grow, if your product needs to do more, if you see a great market opportunity, it's all about you. So you actually, first of all, your ability to deliver is all dependent on you. Your ability to move fast or change direction is all about you. And you have to basically hire all of the different people in order to make it happen. In the platform business model, the game changes significantly, because what you're doing there is you're creating the platform that allows others to create value on it. What it's actually integrating, allowing others to faster integrate into other products. Or whether it's in the case of BigCommerce, for example, creating this digital commerce platform, but then there's so many different payment methods, and the payment methods in the US are significantly different to Europe, even more different to Asia Pacific. And you don't need to build as a company, even as a public company with thousands of people, you don't have to build all of those things. And you actually tap into the world of other companies that can build a business on your company. So you actually have the story of winning together. And in order to do it, you need to understand how all of that works, because it's not going to be just a technology that you provide. You need to think about a couple of other things as well. However, before we actually go into what are those things, what you need to understand is that the reason why 70% of all the unicorns are platforms and the largest companies are platforms is because those companies, and especially during the market economic situation that we had just within the last couple of years, have shown higher profitability. And again, the reason why they actually have the higher profitability is because you don't have to own all the resources and all the capabilities in order to create value and to capture more customers. Those companies are also more resilient. We all have seen what was happening within the last couple of years in the business, and how many layoffs were happening, and how all the teams had to become smaller, more compact, and however you call it, whatever the word is actually being used for that. But those companies have been able to sustain their business, because the value that is being created is not on their paycheck. It's not all the people that actually have to be hired within the company in order to continue the innovation to strive. It also allows the companies to bring the new ideas outside. As a product manager, and especially for the product companies, your business is your product, but you're always bounded to all the different things that you can do internally. And then the more companies and the more people you actually have outside, the higher chances that you will be creating something innovative. For example, let's say if we're thinking about iOS and Apple. Every year, Apple is successful, and all of us, or the majority of us, I know maybe not everybody is using Apple, but actually uses Google products instead. We are using those products not for what Apple provides out of the box. We are using those products for all of those different ideas, all of those different teams across the world and smaller companies created on top. And that's the reason why iOS is dominating the market comparing to, for example, Nokia or BlackBerry back then. Because those companies tried to do everything themselves, and they were not able to be innovative, they were not able to be resilient, and their strategy has been bounded to only the people that had to think about the strategy and the capabilities. I also really like this chart, but it's maybe a little bit smaller here. But ultimately what it says is that looking at the last couple of years, Accenture did this really big survey, and they saw that all of the platform companies actually been more resilient. It showed up in all of their numbers for the revenue, it showed up in all of their numbers for profitability, and also their ability to sustain the macroeconomic situations like this. And the reason why I'm actually bringing that up, because as a product manager, I think it's really important to understand that you're building not just a feature function for customers, you're building the products as a business. Only then your companies are going to be successful if you build something that can sustain the years, can actually bring a lot of revenue, and allow the company to continue innovate regardless of what's happening outside of the company. So let's talk about what is a platform business model, because I kind of already talked about this a lot, but didn't give any specifics about it. So when you think about the linear business, it's literally you as a company produce something and you sell it to others. And you obviously try to have as many customers as you possibly can, and you can apply it to whatever you do, whether it's a product that, I don't know, like any specific packaged goods, that is linear business model. If you're even selling your apps or products that only you control the destiny of, it's a linear business model. The moment when you actually go into the two sides of the product creation, where you have the platform, and then you have the people who consume the value that is being created on the platform, and you have the people who actually create the value on the platform that is not you, you have a platform. And the more people you have on both sides, it kind of creates this network effect that actually gets everybody fired up. For example, with Uber, they created the platform, they invited the drivers, and they invited the travelers. With Airbnb, they invited all of the hosts and the travelers as well. With iOS, the reason why they actually have their developer conference first is because they know that their success is highly dependent on people who are creating the apps before they can invite all of their consumers. Because the consumers are going to be consuming the value of this whole platform, not just the iOS product. And the same thing, for example, goes to, for example, here we just talked about BigCommerce, which again might be a familiar product for others. Same thing goes in there. You have your platform, and then on this platform, other developers can create a lot of value that then is being consumed by the people who actually run their digital commerce platforms. The same approach actually is also applicable even if you have internal development platform that a lot of people typically don't understand how it's going to be applicable. But it is, because if you create this platform and your goal is to have the goal is to improve operational efficiency within the company, you are trying to create this platform that allows other developers to build faster and more efficiently. So then the end result of this whole platform is going to go up. But the platform itself is not going to be consumed in a kind of in just its own way. It's because all the other teams would be able to apply and build more value on it. So that's actually what's really interesting about it. And not that many businesses typically think about what are those two sides of the coin here, because most people think about, do I have me and what are my customers? So if we're thinking about the main ingredients of the platform business model, in a kind of oversimplifying way, there are three main components. The first one is network effect. You have to create that network effect between different types of people that you have. And sometimes it's not just a group, sometimes it's actually even more complicated. You have to purposely develop and invest into building ecosystems. For example, again, if we're thinking about Apple, it's just an example of the company that I pretty adore for what they have done, is they have invested a lot of time to create that Apple ecosystem network around them in order for kind of those people to create the new value on it. And the ecosystem is not going to happen by itself. It's actually something that needs to be deliberately created, and product managers need to be deliberately investing time in building the features functions for all of those different roles. For example, we're also thinking, we can look at the example of Salesforce, or even what is actually really interesting is Spotify. So Spotify, for example, and a lot of people probably know what Spotify is, but they have created their internal development platform with the goal of actually making their development for Spotify faster. But what it actually allowed them to do is, because they had so many different developers kind of contributing to making this platform better, they, at the end, actually abstracted this product and created a completely separate product line for just internal development platforms that is called Backstage, if I'm not mistaken, kind of which actually turned this new product to be a completely new thing. So that's actually one of those benefits of treating even your internal development platforms that accelerate something as absolutely new kind of idea and absolutely new product that you can actually monetize. And the other really important thing to be forgotten in platform business models, that people typically don't invest in something for free. So they're doing this because there needs to be enough motivation for them. It needs to be either incentives like your life is going to be better because you have this internal development platform and it's going to be faster and more enjoyable to build on something, or it's actually an opportunity to make money on it. For example, when you think about, again, iOS, all of those developers create those apps because they actually want to build businesses on it. The same goes to I know, for example, if we look at more marketplaces as a platform business model, Uber drivers go there because they actually want to make money on it. And all of that experience is something that has to be deliberately planned for. It has to be deliberately thought of as a product management initiative. And only then is going to be happening together when you actually master all of those three different aspects: network effect, ecosystem development, and incentives and monetization. And coming pretty much to the end of it, I kind of wanted to leave you with some questions to think about, because obviously this has been kind of a lot of brain dump on what platforms are and how you can think of them. However, and we can actually, because we still have a little bit of time, we can think about some of it together. So first of all, like when you're thinking about your product, can your product enable a network effect? Are there different types of users that you can actually invite to your product so then you can unlock more of the interactions between different sides of the platform? And that by nature will actually turn your product to be a platform. Another one is, can you actually create an ecosystem? Is there enough, like a distinct group of people that can become like an ecosystem? But for those people, you would actually need to give them the right incentives and the right monetization strategies, because the ecosystem is not just the group of people. It's going to be the group of people that have a shared goal behind them. So either somebody, like the list of people or the profile of users who can actually become the ecosystem for you, and you can deliberately give them certain tasks to solve. Either an opportunity to actually monetize through it. So for example, when you look at, again, Apple, and I'll just use it as an example, a lot of their revenue comes from selling all of those apps. And most people will think about like that it's actually from selling the iOS, like the iPhones itself, but it's not, because actually the majority of the value comes from all of those different value creation that has been created by all of their ecosystem, their partners. And all of that, whether your product is small or relatively large, all of that is something that you can also enable on your platform, but it's going to be something that needs to be strategically thought of as a business model, not just as a product technology. And the other really important question is, how can you scale your product easier? Because the majority of the time, we as product managers think about that we need to have more people on our teams. We need to have more engineers, more product managers, more designers in order to actually build all of those feature capabilities, because we have the list of all the things that our customers want. And only if we had them, then our product would be so much better and we would be able to capture a lot of the market share. But I would encourage all of you to start thinking about, is there a way to actually scale some parts of your product using this model of the platform business models and deliberately leave some of the gaps to others to solve, so then you don't have to be the only one who's solving everything, and you don't have to be the ones who are actually bringing the innovation, but instead you're actually facilitating the interactions on the platform. And that is actually brings us to the end of this talk today. I wanted to thank you for obviously the time. As I already mentioned, I do share a lot of the knowledge about the platform business models, because I truly believe that there is a lot of potential in there. And I actually see that there's not that much knowledge that is available for the product managers on this, which actually allows you or leaves you outside of understanding how some of those business models can actually change the future of your companies. So if you're interested for more, obviously follow me on LinkedIn, and I typically host a lot of webinars for free on a monthly basis, where I actually dive into that way more. So we'll be happy to learn what your questions are. We'll be happy to actually answer all of that, and I think there's a lot of more potentials for lots of you to try to see if certain aspects of your products can be treated more as a platform. And that's it from me for today, but we still have time, so I would be happy to hear from you if that's applicable to what you're thinking to your products. Are there any questions or thoughts?
Can you talk a bit more about the risk from being a platform? So let's say I order food from DoorDash, and it comes like, a mess. Do you blame DoorDash or do you blame the restaurant for not putting the lid on, right? Mm-hmm. So you take some responsibility. What are the other risks that you see?
Yeah. So it's depending on the type of the platform. Like there's obviously, as with everything that we do in life, there's pros and cons. There's like benefits, but also there are lots of risks. So when you're designing the platform, you need to understand like the platform is not just technology. That's really important to understand. The platform is just enabler for a lot of the new value being created on the platform. And you need to understand what is that main thing that the platform provides. For example, if we're talking about the DoorDash, it's about connecting the people who are hungry to people who have food, right? And there you need to understand is kind of like as a platform, what kind of quality of people you actually invite to your platform. And there's like lots of different talks about, is your platform open to anybody, or do you actually vet those people? Do you have any guide rails and policies who can be on your platform or not? How much do you control the value? How much? That's why actually typically people have like rate my delivery, or if you're actually talking about, for example, creating like software, for example, Apple has a really strict policy for reviewing all the innovation that is created on the platform. So the platform and like the product managers within the platform, they spend a lot of time actually designing those guide rails for the platform, but not necessarily all the features and the functions for the end users. And those are the type of things that need to be considered. For example, how many of you know WordPress? Yeah. So WordPress is a really interesting platform as well. They didn't have any quality controls for a long time. So that's why, which is a good and bad, because they actually allowed anybody to go and create and do whatever you want. But at the same time, it has built an ecosystem because WordPress didn't have any quality guide rails of all of those people who actually, like, you can hire them and they're gonna create structure out of your mess and they will protect you from security issues that all of those different apps potentially brought to you. So the same, but like when, for example, you look at, I don't know, for example, let's say Shopify. So Shopify probably also many of you know. So they actually control the quality of their apps quite extensively. So that doesn't create any of the mess. But now instead of hiring and creating the ecosystem of the people who actually fix Shopify stores, they created the ecosystem of people who create apps on the Shopify platform. So regardless of like how much you as a platform can like want to take control of, you would be able to create the ecosystem, and you need to understand what are going to be those different ecosystems of people. And sometimes it comes by surprise, sometimes it just happens naturally, but the most strategic companies actually plan for it, and they actually build those ecosystems around it.
I was curious, what mistakes do you think that Microsoft made with Microsoft Windows Mobile that like it didn't succeed? I think my manager at the time, he joked that he bought a Windows phone from another developer, and the only people who had the Windows phone were other developers.
Well, to be honest, I also actually never had a Windows phone, so I don't really know kind of all the mistakes there, but kind of like, for example, looking at, this is really interesting, like I'll actually dive into that because I don't have all of the data, kind of like data to explain in details like what actually went wrong there. But one of the things that is either lack of like network, like basically ecosystem, because again, if we're talking about successful platforms, and going back to this diagram here, in order for the platform to be successful, to what you just said, you need to make sure that it's not just other developers that you have, because if you have the other developers who build things for developers, it's missing the other side of the platform, which is all about the buyers and the consumers. So the platform is always, it's in a network effect, and all of those both sides are equally important. If you have your Windows developers and all the developers use it, but none of the consumers want to consume it, you don't have this scalable network. If, for example, I don't know, let's say on DoorDash, you have a lot of people, like a lot of restaurants, but nobody trusts DoorDash to deliver quality food, it's not going to be a successful platform. So I don't necessarily know what exactly went wrong with Windows Phone, but the network effect for a platform is one of the key things that if you don't do it right and you don't deliberately think about the two sides of the platform, it's never going to work. So the same thing, like you can imagine, like YouTube. If only people who want to produce the videos were there, but the content was not interesting to anybody, there is no platform. It's just a technology that you try to push to somebody, and then you like rely on people to buy it. But I know it may work or maybe not.
This is kind of interesting for me because do you see a network effect with like personal injury lawyers in Texas? with like all these advertisements for Thomas J. Henry and
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Chloe, because it is something I got involved with, and hearing your talking, I'm kind of like putting the business all together, and it seems like data is the most important thing for helping people with car crash settlements. Like, to me, it was a complicated marketplace, but it seems like you simplified it a bit.
Well, so it's interesting. First of all, never ever had that example in terms of the platform business models. But like, if they actually have it as more of a marketplace, right? Like, you have the people who had an injury, and then you have the network of people who can help you, like those lawyers, then yeah, it is a network effect. And like, I didn't go into a lot of details, but those platforms, they can be like on a vertical or they can be horizontal. But there's also a lot of the interesting studies right now talking about how important it is to create those kind of vertical, like niche focused marketplaces, because people don't want to go like to, for example, like eBay is this horizontal platform that, I don't know, you can go and buy whatever you want, right? It used to be a niche, but like now it's not. But like, people would not go and like look for, I know obviously like lawyers is not the right place, but like, let's say if you go to Upwork, like Upwork can help you with whatever. But like, you're not gonna immediately think about Upwork when you're searching for the lawyer that helps with a car crash accident. So yeah, it is a network effect, and it is a platform business model if it's just a marketplace around all of that. And it's all about like, how can you connect the user, like what is the value that you provide to that user? Like, maybe that person who actually got into accident fills out certain things and actually come with a demand, and then the platform can match to those lawyers. So then again, you're creating the whole business while you're not a lawyer, and while you hopefully also have not been in an accident, but you facilitate the exchange between the people who need, like both sides of things who need each other in order to be successful, right?
I have a question. So I noticed all of these platforms are big, like the iOS, Apple, and Google, and others. So what do you suggest for some small product manager who wants to build a platform without going to these early adopters like DoorDash, Facebook, Amazon? How do we go to build, any resources so we can build small niche platforms? And
Yeah, as I already mentioned, I think right now, I was trying to find like a good chart, but it's actually proven to be really difficult to have a concise picture. But as of now, like if you look at, for example, different VC funds and different PE companies, but just like in general, what's happening on the market, there are lots of niche platforms that are being created specifically for those like vertical cases that we're talking about, where it's a specific niche where you can say, well, I know I actually want to create the platform for, I know, the people who are in accident and the lawyers, or maybe it's for healthcare providers. Same goes with the platforms that actually allow somebody to build on top. So for example, there's a number of new companies that allow you to, for example, let's say Stripe. I know hopefully all of you are familiar with Stripe. Obviously Stripe is a big company right now, but they right away started as a platform business model. They were not trying to actually build every single thing for everybody. And they were not trying to compete with like digital commerce solution. They just allowed somebody to go and build, kind of like integrate their solution into it. So if we're talking about like resources of how to get started, there's a lot of books about platform business models available out there. They're mostly talking about kind of marketplaces, which actually I found really confusing for lots of people who work in more like technology-enabled platforms. But if you abstract it enough and kind of look at it from a business perspective, there are lots of different values that are being, highlighted there. Also, kind of that's partially what I also try to do with all the work that I do, like the webinars and my LinkedIn posts, trying to bring a lot of that to other PMs, kind of to explain how they can be using the platform thinking like applied to their products as well, because there's actually not that many like platform product management books or resources out there, but there are lots of platforms. So, and everybody's doing it by trial and error, which is not great. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, and hopefully you found it helpful. Reach out for more questions if you have them, and it was a great honor to spend time with you.